Okay, I believe we are live now. And can you hear me? Shout out to the guy that dropped that first comment. Hopefully you can hear me now. If so, just put a comment in the chat before I continue. Oh man, I was talking for like 4 minutes and nothing came up. This has happened before, to be fair. Um, but yeah, well, this is take two now, so we'll try again. We'll try to start this again. So, yes, the topic of the live stream, what do you believe to be true about the world? So I'll just repeat what I basically said at the start, um, which is this. So in as you can imagine, it's the end of the year. People start reflecting on how the year's been, and it's a good time to look back, look at the journey, the ups and downs. And so I woke up in a very reflective mood, um, because like I said, it's the end of the year, right? I'm thinking about what's going to happen next year, what my plans are when it comes to career, relationships, family, location, uh, etc., etc., right? But for now, I wanted to really take a moment to look back, right? And because this year's been a crazy year, right? It's been a crazy year for me, especially, of course, when it comes to dating. And because of all the crazy experiences I've had, particularly in the last 4 months, I couldn't help but wonder, so much has happened. And it's not that long ago that I used to think a certain way, right? I had certain beliefs. I operated in certain paradigms. I had a strong set of assumptions about the world, about my place in the world, and let's even go as far as to say about what I believed to be possible, right? What I genuinely thought was possible for someone like me, especially when it comes to dating, right? Because this is what I talk about on the channel, right? So, and before I keep on going, I guess I should introduce myself. So, if you don't know, my name's Ian. 28 years old, and yeah, I started this channel just to document my dating journey, specifically when it relates to code approach and daytime code approach, which is the skill set that I learned about a year and a few months ago, and it completely transformed my life. It completely changed who I am, how I operate, how I move, and of course, most importantly, it actually transformed my dating life. And I'm seeing a girl right now in London. I was in Thailand a few days ago for a month, had some experiences there. And even before that, things were going well, you know? So, Suit and Winter, what's up, Suit and Winter? Can you hear me? Hello, hello. Please tell me you can hear me. This can't be happening again. um, like the stream if you can hear me. Oh, perfect. Okay, what's up, bro? Yeah. So yeah, I'll address the chat comments maybe halfway through the stream. But yeah, shout out to you, bro. Yeah, so it was yeah, so just I think it was a crazy year for me, right? And everything just so much has changed, right? So much has changed, and I've grown so much, and it's insane to see that happen in a fairly short amount of time, right? And when I first started Code Approach, I could have never imagined that I would be where I am right now with the options I have right now. And more importantly, just the way I feel when it comes to dating, when it comes to talking to chicks and all that sort of thing, right? And so I thought, I really had to sit down. I woke up this morning and I thought, I literally had my coffee right here. Shout out to Gales. I had my coffee and I was like, what is the main difference between who I am now versus who I was 6 months ago or a year ago? And the reality is this, right? Back to the title. What do you believe to be true about the world? Because if you really think about it, we're just a walking set of assumptions. All of us, right? Me, you, whoever's watching. We walk around, we have certain beliefs, we have certain ideas, and some are strongly held, right? So we have these fervent beliefs that we cling on to, and nobody can tell us otherwise, and nobody can convince us that this isn't true. And then we have other beliefs that maybe we're willing to budge on, right? If somebody tells me, you know, if somebody tells me Hawaiian pizza tastes like trash, then if I think Hawaiian pizza tastes okay, then maybe I could change my mind if I have a bad pizza. Or I don't know, something trivial like that, right? There are beliefs that we don't really care about. They're very flexible. And then there's some beliefs that just change every single day, right? But I think, of course, we have like a mixture of these different assumptions and beliefs. But when it comes to dating, nowadays with dating, right? All of us, and I know this for a fact, all of us, me, you included, we've all had certain experiences, and these experiences they color the way that we view the world, the way that we view women, the way that we view ourselves, and all of this changes how we behave, how we show up. And you wake up in the morning and you think a certain way about yourself, and this could be for better or for worse, right? And so, like I said previously, we're just a walking set of beliefs, but these beliefs are informed by your experiences, right? So you could take two people who maybe even look the same, kind of sound the same, but they've had completely different experiences, right? I'm sure you've seen those, like there's like studies or these experiments or whatever where they have these twins who are separated at birth and then they eventually come back around. And I think in those studies, correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, these these guys, they have maybe different lives. I think they have different lives or different outcomes. Anyway, that's a bit of a tangent, but the point is these experiences shape how we view the world. But here's the sneaky thing about these experiences, right? And just really take a second to deep this, right? So you can have an experience and it can be negative, right? So let's say you shoot your shot to a girl, right? And she says, "Yo, get away from me," and maybe you're 16 years old, right? And you think to yourself, "Oh, this girl just doesn't like me, and therefore something's wrong with me." And maybe she even says something specific, right? Maybe she texts, maybe you find out through a friend of a friend that she doesn't like you because of your hair, right? Or she doesn't like you because of your body, your body type. And you take that piece of information from this one girl when you're 16, and you make an assumption that because she said that, that must mean that the way that I am, which means I'm skinny or I have a certain hairstyle, that must mean that nobody else will take me seriously when it comes to dating. That must mean that no other girl's gonna fuck with me if I, because of the way I look or because of the way I present myself, fundamentally, right? Because think about it, when you're that age, like we don't really, like, when you're 15 or 14, at least when I was 15, 14, I'm 28 now. But when I was that age, I wasn't thinking about going to the gym or anything like that. You sort of just are a kid. You're just who you are, right? You're not thinking, oh, I need to maximize my jawline or thread my eyebrows or do this skincare routine. You're 14 years old. Like nobody's thinking about that. That's silly. You know, like hopefully you guys watching, I imagine maybe some of you are quite young, maybe you're younger than me, maybe you're the same age, slightly older. But there was a point in time when this like looks maxing stuff just wasn't a thing. Like if you really think about it, this looks maxing stuff is so gay. It's such a gay way of like like trying to become a valuable guy, because if you think about it, you're really being like a woman, you're being like a girl. Like girls are the ones who do the makeup, they're the ones who spend X amount of time looking in the mirror. And so why are guys spending that much time addressing their superficial qualities, right? And there was a point in time when that just wasn't that important. So without going on a tangent, the thing is, you have that experience, she makes that comment, and then you assume that because of that comment, you're completely cooked. Like there's no hope for you. And you walk around the next day, the next few weeks, and the next few months with that assumption, that belief that that's basically the truth. And it's so sinister, it's so bad, because what ends up happening is, because you believe it, it becomes true, right? It becomes true. And when you make it true through consistently telling yourself these, negative messages, you project that sort of belief onto other people. And it's sort of this weird self-fulfilling prophecy where, because you believe it to be true, it actually becomes true, and then that's just your experience. But if you were to rewind and say, well, what if the next day you tried again and then you met a girl who actually liked you the way the way that you are, then that would completely change how you believe what you believe to be true about how how girls are receptive to you. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is these are just limited experiences, right? So it's we have to be careful. We can't allow certain experiences to completely color how we view the world because it's a generalization. It's not actually true. Just as much as a negative experience can lead you in one direction, so can a positive one, right? And it's funny because what ends up happening after that is so we have the experience and then we go online and this is where we're cooked. This is where it's like a wrap, right? Because you go online and then you see a video and the video says, how to get girls in 5 easy steps. And then it says build this amount of muscle, make this much money, etc., etc. And so what happens is you have your negative experience and you've already formed a bias, right? That guys who look like me can't get girls because we're skinny or because we're this race or because we have this hairline or because we have this smile or because we don't sound this way. And then we go online and we see a video from a guy who's got thousands of subs, hundreds of thousands of subs, millions of subs, and he says, this is what we need to look like, or this is what we need to do in order to be successful. And we make this connection. And it's a very subconscious connection. It's not like you're actively making that connection. You just subconsciously make that connection. And so now all of a sudden, you who like you're here and this is what you want, in order to get here, you have to go through that person's like path or whatever they're suggesting. Right? Now, on the surface it seems fine because it's such a weird dynamic because I'm not sitting here saying that you shouldn't try to improve yourself. You should try to improve yourself. Like we should all be trying to become the best versions of ourselves, whether that's fitness wise, career wise, if you're into spirituality, spiritually wise. But ultimately, you should be doing that from a place of wholeness and not in abundance and not scarcity, meaning it's not, oh, I'm not enough and then I need to do this to become enough. It's I'm decent, I'm good enough to some degree, and I can actually get results in dating as I am, but I'll also try to improve myself just to level up, right? But the core drive is different. So it's not coming from this place of, oh, I'm like a piece of shit. It's coming from a place of I just want to level up because that's what we should do as guys, right? As men, we should be trying to level up and be better. But but like that's the issue, right? So our beliefs are also um let's say fueled. They're fueled by what we see online. And this is why it's important to curate your content online with a lot of intention. Yeah, like the algorithm is designed in like two ways. I think it can either keep you hooked in a positive way where you're taking in lots of good messages, but at the same time it's also designed to like emotionally rile you up, and so you end up becoming heated. You find yourself going down these rabbit holes, and they feed negativity, right? They feed your negative bias. And I think if you think about it, what's the path of least resistance? Is it easier to accept all the negative beliefs you hold and to just fuel them by these other opinions, or is it easier to basically do a 360 and do everything in your power to prove those beliefs wrong, which basically means going out there, approaching, right? Because when it comes to my beliefs, right, the ones that I've defeated, the ones that didn't serve me a year ago before Cold Approach, the way that I tackled them was by getting outside and actually acting, right? Because I'll give you boys this story, right? This is like the most basic example I can give you, right? Especially at the start of my Cold Approach journey, right? So before I did my first approach, my biggest fear was that the girl would just react badly and she would be like get away from me, right? Like that was my biggest fear. I thought that they wouldn't entertain me. I thought they might think I'm weird. I just assumed that it would be like a terrible interaction, very awkward, very embarrassing. So that was my belief, right? And that belief is fueled by, again, years and years of rejection and, negative like thought loops, right? So, but then I thought to myself, well, let me just go out there and test it out, right? Let me get some empirical evidence, right? Because yes, I have, before I went for my first approach, I had, let's say, some empirical evidence based on the times I'd shot my shot in like high school or university. And yes, they were negative, but again, like that was many, many years ago. And we're in the present day now, right? So let me try and expand my sample size. Let me experiment. Let me test out my assumption a bit more. So I go out and I don't know how I found the courage, but I found it and I did my first approach. And what do you know? She reacted well. She smiled. We spoke for probably 10 minutes. This is my first approach, by the way, a year ago, September 14th, 2024. She smiled. We have a back and forth. She gives me a number. And then we actually still texted each other afterwards. And after that approach, literally after we parted ways and I went to the tube station in London, I couldn't believe what had happened, right? Because then the fear and the assumption I had about what would happen was just completely disproved. Yeah, it was completely shattered. And so, cold approach, if you get into it and you actually do approaches and you do them again and again, what happens is you just systematically break down each belief, boom, 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 boom. Like it's a magical experience of like shedding all this bullshit and replacing it with stuff that actually helps you, right? Beliefs that actually encourage you, that actually empower you. And then at the end of that, you become what I am right now, which is just a completely different person, right? Somebody who instead of going into an approach thinking this is gonna go poorly, I think to myself, oh yeah, she's gonna like me. I mean, why wouldn't she? I mean, I've literally approached the girl that was 10 times hotter than her and she liked me, so why wouldn't she like me? I've been on dates with girls like her, so I mean, yeah, I don't see why this wouldn't work. Yeah, so this is essentially what happens, man. And yeah, it's like these beliefs you have to be careful. You have to really take a moment to step back and review and audit all these beliefs because they're either going to serve you or they're going to hinder you. They're going to stop you from getting where you want to get to. And but the antidote, the solution is to act, right? I don't think you can necessarily think your way. I don't think you can think your way out of a certain belief. Like some sort of affirmation. I think that can help you in some regard, but I think let's say, the most powerful method is to literally get out there, right? Um, so yeah, I think those are like my initial thoughts on these beliefs that we hold. Anyway, there's somebody who in the chat. What are you guys saying? A few guys have made comments. I didn't say what's up. Chan, Sneha. There's only one person in the chat now. Anyway, hello Sneha Simran. What's up, bro? I'm assuming that's a guy's name. Simran, I know that name. Is that Indian? What's up, bro? But yeah, I guess those are my initial thoughts on on just like beliefs. But and then here's another point, right? So when it comes to women, right, and girls, like trying to pick up girls or whatever, like ask yourself this question, right? How many women are there in the world? I mean, there are literally billions, like billions, right? Billions and billions and billions. Now, of course, of those billions, how many are actually eligible for someone like you or for someone like me, right? Because I don't know about you guys, but I'm not trying to make moves to the 80-year-old woman by the bus stop, right? Shout out to her, but like that's obviously not my type. So of course, not every single woman is eligible in terms of moving to them or trying to hit them up. But again, there's plenty of women out there. So don't you think it's ridiculous to make a generalization that don't you think it's crazy that we have these like biases based on a couple of experiences, maybe 10 experiences at most. Yeah. And then we just assume that that's just how the rest of the world works. It's crazy. It's crazy because that's obviously a very skewed perspective. So what's the solution? Get out there and approach, yeah, as much as you can to prove yourself wrong, to prove yourself otherwise, right? Don't box yourself into this belief just based on a few interactions. I mean, it doesn't actually make any sense, like just objectively, empirically, right? Like, is it really the point? Like, is it really possible that nobody's gonna like you? And even if you have to go through lots of rejection to get there, that's just the path that everybody takes. I don't care if you're like super looks max. I don't care if you look like James Bond or I don't know. You see these guys on the internet, like these, like like what's that guy who's like super suave? Ah, the YouTuber, is it Dennis? Duke Dennis, like Duke Dennis. I'm sure Duke Dennis gets Duke Dennis probably gets rejected a lot. Maybe we don't see it online, right? But anybody who has a good dating life has to get rejected a bunch of times, right? Because most women just don't like you for whatever reason. They're either taken or they don't find you that attractive or they're not compatible in some other sense, which is fine. Like that's okay, right? The point of like cold approach or any sort of method um, is to just find the people that are like your people. Yeah, you're just trying to find your matches. And I think the thing that the big hang up for the guys is that they at some level they truly do not believe that those women exist. They you genuinely believe that you're just cooked unless you you know gain muscle, increase your height by a couple of inches, you know, have a certain hairstyle, whatever the case might be, right? So you count yourself out. But those people exist. Why wouldn't they? Right? Even just it doesn't make any sense how if you have to look a certain way, if you have to look like this very specific description of a high value, whatever guys are calling it now, like if you have to match that, then that doesn't make any sense because what happens to everybody else, right? If you have to be top 1%, then it's not possible for all of these women to only be with those 1% guys because there's only 1%. So it doesn't make any sense, right? So again, like just take a second to order your beliefs, right? Um, so yeah, there was a couple of questions. So John Smith, shout out to you, John. Why do you go so why do you go direct so much in your approaches? Okay, that's a good question. Because I think when you go direct, it's very polarizing. And when you're direct, you're essentially giving the girl the clearest reason why you're there. So I think, me personally, I think direct is the quickest way to just show your intentions from the get-go. And the reason why I think that's important is because you don't want to waste your time. So if you go indirect and you say, hey, I like your style, or you go in and you say, oh, how are you doing? If you don't, like, let's say you go so indirect, you don't even give a compliment because there's levels to it, right? So if you go into a conversation and you ask her, how's your day been? What are you doing in this coffee shop? To me, that's skirting around the edge. You're dancing around what you actually want. Because let me ask you this, John, right? And I'm not. This is not like an attack. I'm just like trying to have this cool back and forth, right? Why are you there? Why are you talking to her? Are you talking to her because she has a nice style? Lots of people have nice style. I see people outside all the time wearing nice coats, wearing nice jackets, wearing cool shoes. You don't compliment those people. In fact, there was a guy this morning that when I was going to get my coffee, he had some cool sneakers. I didn't compliment his sneakers. I saw a lovely woman with a very nice like a beige kind of Burberry coat. I didn't go and give her a compliment. So why am I specifically complimenting this girl's style? Right? Do you actually care about her style? And I'm not saying that you don't, but what I'm saying is the reason we're going in for these approaches is because we think the girl's beautiful, right? That's the main reason. And then of course on top of that, we want to talk to her, take her out on a date or get her contact details. And so being direct just really puts the message out there. And so I think that's really helpful because you get an answer right there and then. Because you can imagine a situation where you're going indirect, and she might just think you're there to have a nice chit chat. That's genuinely what she might think. And now you spent 5-10 minutes having this nice back and forth, but it's not really going anywhere because you haven't made your intentions clear. So whereas if you're direct, it's like, I like you, you look good, I think you look hot. And then now she either goes, oh, I have a boyfriend, or she just goes, oh yeah, I appreciate that, but I'm not really interested, right? And you just cut the like you cut the bullshit, you cut the sort of this like back and forth, yada 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 talk that isn't really constructive or productive for anybody, right? Sure, you get to have this nice conversation, and maybe to some degree you kind of protect your ego because she's not rejecting you in like immediately. Because think about it, if you give a direct compliment, if you tell a girl you look incredible, or you look amazing, or you're beautiful, like in reality what you're really saying is, you look incredible, do you how do you feel about me, right? And in that moment she can just say, I'm not interested. And that hurts more than going indirect, having a conversation, and then eventually she tells you, i don't really I don't really like you like that. So I think directness is just the case of, one, it shows how confident you are, and it's just a quicker way to get to the point. Because that's what we want to do. Like, I'm a man, you're a woman, I'm attracted, what's up? Simple, right? Um, so John Partridge says full on direct can have negative outcome too. It can have a negative outcome, sure, but like who cares? Like, how negative, like when you say negative, what does negative mean? She says no, or she gives you a look. I mean, you can handle it, right? I'd rather have a negative outcome than than being sat in the conversation for 10 minutes, right? And I don't actually believe that, to be honest, John Partridge. I don't like I don't see like your definition of negative. We probably have a different definition, because to me I don't see it as negative. I see it as, oh, she said no, great, I can move on to the next one, right? Because what's the worst case scenario? She blows you off or gives you that look of like, not really, I'm good. Like, that's probably the worst case scenario. So, I mean, yes, your ego will be hit, especially if you're early on in the journey. But once you get used to that rejection, is you realize, well, this doesn't really matter, right? Your time is that important. What do you mean by that? I don't quite understand that point. My time is important. Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm trying to go direct, because you can just get out of it. You can get out of there and move on. Because yeah, you don't want to be having these long conversations. And to be fair, like I'm guilty of it too. Like there was a point where, to be fair, I always go direct. I don't think I've ever not gone direct, especially in the last 6 months with my approaches. Um, but even when I go direct, there are still cases where we have a conversation. Yeah. So what I'm saying when I say you'd waste 10 minutes, what I'm saying is, if you don't go direct, you might waste 10 minutes. 10 minutes is a lot of time. 10 minutes could be also spent approaching another two girls, or another three, right? So 10 minutes is valuable time, right? So yes, you want to move on as quickly as possible, for sure. Am I from Somalia? No, I'm not. It's funny, when I was younger, a lot of people thought I was Somalian. I don't get that as much anymore. I am Kenyan. I am yeah, I'm East African. I'll give you that. Shout out to East Africa. But no, I'm not Somali, my brother. It's so funny, like why is like Somali, I mean, to be fair, I don't know if you're trying to be like a troll or anything. But like, I don't know, people notice, like people always say that Somalians are XYZ. It's always seen as like an insult. I've never understood that. I like Somali people. I like all my African people. Shout out to everybody from East Africa. I like everybody. I don't discriminate. If you're cool, you're cool. Your hairline says you're from Somalia. That's a good point. That's a good point. The big forehead, the big forehead that definitely gives it away that I'm East African, half Indian, half African. Okay, fair enough. Anyway, back to the topic. So John Smith said, "I like that you want to cut the bull and prefer direct. I avoid it because you don't really know the person. Yes, you might like her style, physical look, but you then talk and see if values match up." Okay, that's a good point. That's a good point. That's a good point. I mean, you don't know the person, but I wouldn't say that's a fair reason to not go direct, because I don't know if that's really related. I don't see how not knowing the person is an issue, because we're not there to tell, like, we're not when you tell somebody they look amazing, like, it doesn't matter if you know them or not. You're just making an observation on how they look, right? Like, people look amazing whether I know them or whether I don't know them. So I wouldn't say that the fact that they're strangers plays a factor in whether or not you can compliment them. I think you can compliment anybody. And a good point to hammer home is that nobody's allergic to a compliment. People love compliments. If it's genuine, right? If you genuinely think she's attractive, then yeah, she will appreciate that. Right? Like, I've never gone up to a girl, given her a compliment, and then she went, "Yeah, but I don't know you." Like, that's never happened. Literally never. And up to this point I've done 900 approaches. So, like, I don't see that as an issue. Um, but then, yeah, in terms of the values, I'll say this, John. Right? Like, I agree. Like, you do want to see if your values match up. That's why I mentioned compatibility, right? But I think the reason we go direct is because we want to sort of tick that checkbox first, which is, I'm physically attracted to you. And so, is this like a reciprocal feeling? So, I like you, do you like me? And if she agrees to that, then now we can get into the minutia. Now we can get into the, how do you feel about me, what's, like, we can now find out if we're compatible in terms of our interests, in terms of our humor, in terms of our vibe. So I think the the direct one is just a great way to just start the convo on a strong footing, right? Because the danger with indirect is, you can talk to someone and your values match up, but they're not attracted to you. And me personally, I'd rather just do it the other way around, so that we get that investment, we get that, like, locked in investment initially, and then now I'm more excited to actually get to know this person, right? Because remember, like, if you think about approach, and we're trying to, like, get these girls on dates, well, we're not just trying to be there to be their friend. We want there to be some sort of, like, sexual tension. We want some tension in there, right? So it's not a case of, I'm there to see if our values match up. Like, I agree that is important, but I can, if, like, the last date I went on, right? The girl I approached, this girl, right? We didn't speak about our values that much during the initial conversation. I think the conversation must have lasted 4 minutes. So 4 minutes isn't really that much time to see if our values match up. So the 4 minutes was actually spent just getting a sense of our vibe. And vibe it's a very intangible metric. It's quite hard to describe. Even I still struggle to describe it. But it's less about what you're saying and the values, because that can all happen on the date. That always happens on the date, when we're actually sat down across from each other, next to each other, having a nice conversation. I think initially, when you're opening, that you don't have to really get that deep. It can just be, like, fairly surface level. It's more a case of, she's trying to gauge if you're cool, calm, collected, confident, chill, also direct, also assertive, right? All these other, like, intangible characteristics. But you made a good point, John. I do concede that, to be fair. Um, Amani says, "Do I have any success with girls?" Yeah. Believe it or not, brother. Believe it or not. Yes. At one point I didn't, but now I do. Yes, lots of success as of late. The past 4 months have been, yeah, pretty good. I mean, I have a video on my channel breaking down a date I went on when I was in Thailand. Um, and so, yeah, that was a pretty crazy experience. But I've had a couple of good experiences, even before that. So, yes, I have success now, but that wasn't always the case, right? Before cold approach, not really. So John Smith says, I honestly believe with PUA community of old, their downside was direct game. It works when you are young, but 40 or 50-year-old approaching young doesn't work. Most people don't know you enough to care. Okay. I don't know, man, because I know people who are 40 years old. I've, spoken to them. If you guys know Christian Casanova, he's got a channel. He coaches guys who are in their 40s and their 50s, and he teaches them to go direct. That's his philosophy. The philosophy that I adopt with directness is from Ephraim, and Ephraim was coached by Christian, and all of them, including myself, preach direct approach, direct game as you call it. So it's yeah, I think it's I think it works. In fact, I don't. It's not that I think it works. I know it works because I've seen the evidence on his channel. So I don't think it's necessarily about your age. I'm sure that plays some sort of factor, and maybe in certain cultures, they're more or less receptive to older guys approaching younger women. But I don't know if for the right person, if you approach if you approach somebody and they're just compatible with you, they'll take it well. And I do truly believe I'm gonna plant my flag with this one, John. Like, and people aren't allergic to compliments. If you give somebody a compliment in a non-creepy way, obviously that's important, and you're direct and you don't conceal your intentions, then they take it well, you know. And so it's funny, yeah. You say most people don't know you enough to care. I don't agree. I don't think it's about whether they know you or not. Nobody knows you. Nobody knows you. So that doesn't really make a difference. If we walked around thinking somebody has to know me enough in order for them to care about the compliment I gave them, then we wouldn't approach anybody because nobody knows us apart from our familiar faces, our friends, right? Or friends of friends through certain social circles. Um, if you compliment a girl in India, you'll be spending a few days in prison. That's tough, eh? Thankfully, I don't live in India then. Yeah, so that's obviously a troll comment, so I'll leave that one. Yeah, no, I think the age thing is interesting. I mean, I'm 28. Now I'm not gonna sit here and speak for 40-year-olds or 50-year-olds. I'm assuming that's your age, John, if that's why the reason you're asking it. But I would encourage you to again question your beliefs about the world, my friend. That's the title of the stream. Question your beliefs because, like I said, there's guys out there who are that age in that age bracket when they approach direct, and they find a lot of success. In fact, they find success because they went direct. Yeah, because direct is harder. And if we talk about the path of least resistance, direct is the path of the most resistance because it really puts the girl in a position there and then to reject you or to accept you. And our egos just don't want to take it. We don't want to take it, right? Because I think it's really important to go into these approaches with the mindset of I don't care how this person reacts as long as I'm being completely honest. Because what is directness? Like, what is directness? Directness is honesty. It's complete honesty. We're not beating around the bush. We are putting our balls on the line physically and metaphorically. Actually, not physically, because that would be like bad. Don't put your balls literally on the line, because that would be like indecent exposure. um, but yeah, it's yeah, it's we're putting ourselves on the line and we're really going all in. It's a case of going all in, which it's like this idea of playing to win rather than playing to not to lose, right? So we're just going all the way in, and if it works, if it works well, right? So look, if you want to go indirect, go indirect. And I will say this, right? I think certain contexts indirect works. So let's say you're in a coffee shop and it's a closed environment and it's very quiet, and let's say the girl sat down working on her laptop. I think it makes sense to be indirect there, because if you go up to somebody in a coffee shop and you say you look incredible, or you look beautiful, it's like it's a bit of a tough one because They can't move, they can't leave. It's a very closed environment. It's not as transient as, outdoors in the street. So yeah, it's a bit harder to really. I think in those scenarios, it makes sense to work your way up towards showing your interest, right? So I guess a good rule of thumb would be the more transient the environment, the more direct you can go. But again, it's like the same thing, right? Like if I'm in a coffee shop and she just looks amazing, then why not just say that? Like of course we don't want to make it awkward, and we don't want to make the girl uncomfortable. But again, it's like we're giving compliments. Like, why is it an issue to give a compliment, regardless of how the person reacts? If it comes from a good place, what's the issue, right? I just don't see why it's an issue. But yeah, but to be fair, like you said, let's agree to disagree. Yeah, we can agree to disagree. Like it is what it is. Um, let's see. Uh, John Smith says, let's agree to disagree. Yeah. So my conventional style, or topics you cover in your approach or date. My conventional style. Um, what is my conventional style? Oh, you mean sorry, conversational style. I read that wrong. Sorry, mate. The coffee is drained through my brain. I read that as conventional, not conversational. What's my conversational style? Honestly, mate, I think I just try to be a bit bantery. I try to sprinkle some fun into the conversation. I try not to keep the convo too, let's say, like generic. You know, I'll ask a few questions and then I'll just go down that conversational thread and try to be as fun as possible, but not like in a exaggerated dancing monkey jester type of vibe. It's more so just trying to, you know, find some fun in the conversation, as my friend Ephraim likes to call it. You just go into the convo, and whatever happens happens. It's very improvisational, which is something I also learned a lot by doing improv comedy. So I did like an improv comedy class last year. It was like a 12-week class, a proper intensive course, and that gave me so much. Let's say it improved my conversational ability when it comes to just bantering with people and having fun with these conversations, because you realize that whatever somebody says, you can always take it in any direction, as long as you're um very good at like identifying certain like threads or themes. So to answer your question, I would say my style is just go with the flow. I go with the flow. I don't try to take the girl too seriously or myself too seriously. But again, it takes two to tango, right? It takes two to tango, right? So sometimes I can try that, but the girl's not giving me back, and so it's very hard to really get into that flow. So I just kind of give up at that point, right? Um, and then in terms of topics, I mean, it's hard to say what topics I cover, because of course it depends on each approach. It depends on each girl. But to be fair, it's the basic stuff, man. Like, I might ask her, if, for example, if I approach her and she looks like she's wearing something fairly smart, and it's a weekday, and I'm in the city, I might be like, oh, like you look very smart. Like, what do you do? Are you like a lawyer or something? I know that could sound a bit PUA. I try to stay away from the PUA type of lingo, and just sort of I comment on what I see in front of me. So I try to keep it as present as possible, because that makes it real as opposed to structured. Because what you really want to do is avoid the structure. The only structure when it comes to the approach should be honestly just the open and how you get in front of her or how you approach her. That's it. When it comes to the conversation, talk about whatever you like to talk about. Because John, to be fair to you, John, like I kind of feel as if we have maybe some similarities when it comes to how we view like the world. Maybe you're fairly, let's say, not deep thinker, but you like to think things through, like logically. And so I would say if you find certain topics interesting and she brings something up about that, then just go down that thread, right? So yeah, but I guess a good rule of thumb is maybe try not to take it too seriously, right? Try to find some level of fun in the convo. So John, another John. There's so many Johns in here, man. You got John Smith and John Partridge. Maybe the style could be seen as confrontational. So this used to be a fear of mine. So that's a good point, Mr. Partridge. Um, I don't think it is if you do it the right way. So a big way to avoid the confrontational energy when you approach is to have a big beaming smile, right? Have a smile. Have a smile. Yeah, smile, gesture, right? Because you know, when you're going in front of the girl and you're saying, "Hey, excuse me, just 1 second," you're smiling, like most girls are disarmed at that point, and you're not like jittery, you're not frantic, you're not like cutting her off. Sorry, you're not cutting her off. Like they're gonna take it well, right? Once you've set that up nicely and then you give the compliment, confrontational, like confrontational, man. I'm not trying to fight anybody. I'm not here to steal anything. I'm not here to cause trouble. I don't see how it could be seen as confrontational. To be fair, some people are always on edge. Like I'll admit this. I once had an approach, and to be fair, this was probably because of the mechanics, right? I probably did the approach poorly. I didn't judge the situation well, but this was early on when I started. Yeah, I once approached the girl and I started her a bit, and she wasn't quite happy about it, and she just walked off. But I'm sure if I'd done it correctly or better, or if it was a different day, then it would have gone the other way. But that's just one approach out of 900. So you're gonna allow that to color in how, like, are you gonna allow that one approach to then stop you from being direct when being direct has actually helped me more than it's hindered me? So I get your point about the confrontational thing, but if you go about it the right way, it's not confrontational. She'll love it. And by bearing in mind, guys, like let me say this: I cannot even count the number of times women have told me, keep doing what you're doing. I love it. And they're telling me this as a result of being direct. Now, if I was indirect, maybe the same thing would have happened, right? They still would have enjoyed the fact that I came over, had a conversation with them, complimented them. But ultimately, my method of being direct was received well by most of them. Even if they had boyfriends, even if they weren't interested, they verbally said this, confirmed it to me. So that's why I like to do it, right? And I just think it's more of a manly thing, guys, to tell the truth. Um, but again, to each their own. John Smith says, I used to use improvisational style and realized it can be directionless. Like you, I did improv. Oh, nice. More storytelling and TED Talks to, oh, sorry, more storytelling and TED Talks to improve my storytelling. Yeah, no, you're right, it can be directionless, which again, it could be, I guess you could see that as a bad thing because you don't want to be too flaily with your conversation. You want it to go somewhere. Um, but I would say, I don't know. Yeah, I think it's more of a net positive than a net negative either way. I wouldn't say that. This is why I made the point that you don't want to be this dancing jester. We're not here to jest the max and be a comedian, right? So everything in moderation, right? We still want to be, we still want to be, let's say, like measured, right? We don't want to be too flaily and too funny because then now we start moving into the territory of I'm the funny or like gay best friend, or I'm here to make you laugh. I'm not here to like polarize you and make you like attracted to me in that sense. So I agree. It can be, you don't want it to go too far in that direction, just like how you don't want it to be too logical. Like in a conversation, right? Think about conversations you have with your mates. Sometimes the conversation is full of banter. Sometimes the conversation is serious. Sometimes it gets deep. Sometimes it's just like surface level. Sometimes there's even moments of silence. Sometimes you don't even need to talk, right? Sometimes we just allow space. So conversations are these complicated dances between two people, and they ebb and they flow, and it's not like a cookie cutter thing, right? So I agree. I agree. I think it's like you don't want to lean too much in one direction. You sort of want to have this nice balance, this nice hybrid. But again, it's different for every conversation. Sometimes you meet a girl and you're just like having a deep conversation, you know? But I find that because in cold approach we don't want to talk for too long, right? And girls are used to having boring, logical conversations with all sorts of people. Because again, like if you think about flirting, because what we're really trying to do here is flirt, right? You want the conversation to be flirty, but like flirty is a again, it's so difficult to describe. But ultimately, it's just like not taking anything seriously, and it's less about what you say, but how you say it. So let's really focus on that, right? Like, how are you communicating? Are you slow? Are you not even are you slow, but are you clear? Are you like do you seem nervous? You know, do you allow spaces in the conversation? Do you give her time to ask you questions rather than rambling the whole time? You know? So that's an important thing to consider as well. So John also says my topics in dates are travel. Oh, okay, so in dates, we're talking about dates now. Okay, so my topics in dates are travel, fun experiences, hobbies and dreams. I tend to have different stories for each one and smoothly transition between them. Yeah, me too. Those are there. If we're talking about dates, yeah, definitely talk about all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I mean, I was just in Thailand and I have a date tonight, and I'm probably going to talk about my travels for sure. Um, yeah, I think when it comes to dates, talk about anything, whatever tickles your fancy, whatever you find interesting. As long as you're being authentic, that's all that really matters. Um, and then you said smoothly transition. Yeah, that's something that I used to struggle with a lot. Just putting my hands up now, like when I first started getting dates from Cold Approach, I think I used to overthink conversations during the date, and I would always try to have this really cool, smooth segue from topic to topic because I was always scared that I didn't want to like spend too much time on one topic. Um, and so yeah, I used to overthink. Okay, when is the right time to transition? And I think that just comes with practice, right? You just go on more dates. You sort of realize when a certain thread has been unraveled enough, and then you just move on. So yeah, that can be a good skill to develop, but I think it just takes more experience. John Partridge, do I take it that you have yet to find your perfect match? My perfect match. Ooh, I mean, I haven't found her yet, I'll be honest, but I don't think I'm trying to look for my perfect match, to be honest. I'm in a phase of life where I'm not trying to lock myself down in any particular long term relationship. So the girl I'm seeing right now, she's okay with me, just keeping it where it is right now. Um, because even next year I plan on traveling more, so I'm not trying to commit to anything serious. But I mean, perfect match. Is there such a thing as a perfect match, Mr. Partridge? I don't know. Perfect is a really loaded word, but who knows? Maybe I'll get there eventually, and I'll let you know. Now you do pick up. What's your philosophy? Okay, philosophy when it comes to approach anxiety. Ooh, and why you think people don't approach? Juicy, juicy question. I have a video on my channel where I think it's titled "This is why you're scared to approach people in public," or sorry, "This is why you're scared to approach women in public." So I think ultimately it's obviously it's fear, right? So John, you've obviously approached before. For anybody who hasn't approached, I'm sure you've thought about it. And when you're in the moment outside and shit gets real and the girls are there, there's a lot of fear. Yeah, like there's a physiological sensation that runs through your entire body. And I'm not joking. I mean, that's literally what happens. Right? Your heart rate goes up, your your breathing becomes more frantic and shallow. You feel this gut feeling that's very it's kind of like when you're on a roller coaster and you're about to like get to the top and then drop. It's that feeling, yeah, that something's about to go down, and it feels very intense. It's very visceral. And so of course, like the physiological symptoms is enough to stop guys from going in because it just feels scary. Like it feels like you're about to go into battle, which is so funny because we're just giving a fucking compliment. Like, how insane is that? We're just giving a compliment. We're giving a compliment. We're trying to make someone's day. And but in our body it feels like we're about to storm the beaches of Normandy. It's like, what the fuck is going on? But anyway, that's what happens, right? So I think that's the main reason. But like, let's dig a bit deeper, right? Because that that physiological fear or that response to the idea of approaching, it doesn't just come from nowhere, right? It's embedded in some other idea or some other fear that we have about what will happen if I go and approach. Because think about it. If it goes well, we're not afraid of it going well, right? Obviously not. Like if it goes well, if the approach goes well, we're going to be happy. But we don't think about it going well. We always think about the worst case scenario. Now, part of that is because as humans, we're negative, like we're negatively biased, and I think that's rooted in some sort of evolutionary psychology. You know, we're sort of wired to take threats more seriously than upside gain, because, for example, if you're a hunter gatherer and you're out in the jungle and you see something that looks like a snake, it's much more, and you're not sure, right? So it looks like a snake, but it might not be a snake. Like, it's much more beneficial for you to assume the worst case scenario, that it is a snake, because it prevents you from approaching it and then finding out it's a snake. So you avoid it, right? You avoid it, and then you know, you live to see another day, because if it was a snake, you'd be fucked, right? And so I think the same thing happens with any other fear that we have in our mind, where we assume the worst case scenario will happen because we want to protect ourselves. But the difference is, we're not talking about poisonous snakes, we're not talking about poisonous ivy or poisonous berries on a tree. We're talking about a dainty looking girl by the bus stop who's like stood by a couple of grandmas. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen, right? So clearly this isn't about survival, this is about ego, right? So we have this fear of rejection, right? And this the rejection, we attach this importance and weight to it, and we think that it will, we think that it will really affect the way that we view ourselves, I guess. And it's like a reflection on how we view ourselves. So we want to protect our ego at all costs, which is why we don't go in. We don't even think about the positive scenario. We're too concerned about being rejected, because it's a bad feeling. And so yeah, people don't approach because they're afraid. It's really, I think it's really it's that simple. Of course, there's all sorts of layers behind that, but that's the main reason, right? We're too concerned about what other people think. We overestimate how people will react. We don't want to be rejected and then have that confirm our already self-limiting beliefs. And of course, we come up with all these excuses, right? So we think that, oh, if I approach her, then someone's gonna pepper spray me, or she's gonna slap me, or or some bystander's gonna come in and save the day and rescue her and ask us, "What are you doing?" Right? We have all these like ideas, these worst case scenarios that pop up in our head. So, and again, that's just another excuse, right? So I think it's all about ego preservation, and yeah, this fear of being judged negatively by not just the girl, but by other people. And of course, it makes sense, because we're social animals, we're social beings. Like we don't just exist in these, like we don't just exist by ourselves. A lot of the way that we view ourselves is dependent on how other people react to us, because we grow up in packs, right? We live in communities, so a lot of our self-worth, whether we like it or not, it comes from what other people think of us, whether it's friends, family, co-workers. And of course, we value certain people's opinions more than others. But even it's crazy, because even outside in the open, when it's a bunch of strangers, we still value their opinion at some level, right? And so if somebody gives us a weird look after we do an approach, or you know we get rejected in front of a group of people, like that spotlight, when that spotlight comes onto us and we're just standing there, like that feels odd. It doesn't feel good. I'm not even going to pretend like it feels good. It doesn't feel great, especially at the start. And so that, I think that's really what guys are afraid of, right? They're afraid of that spotlight. So yeah, that would be my answer to that question without getting too deep. Anyway, I've been going for an hour. This is the longest stream I've done off the cuff. I think I'll end it there. I want to eat some food. Last one, last question, John Partridge. I get the sense that you are an overthinker. Try the que sera sera mindset. You know what's funny, John? I am an overthinker, but I've actually made a lot of progress in that area. So I don't overthink as much. I think my overthinking tendencies have helped me in some sense, but when it comes to the cold approach, dating, moving to girls, I don't really overthink it too much now. So que sera sera. What is that? I've heard that because I like football. I'm a Chelsea fan, and I always hear que sera sera. Oh, whatever will be, will be. Yeah, no, fair enough. I will take that advice, John. The que sera sera mindset. I honestly used to share your ideas, but realized it's something different. Emotional programming. Some people grow up different through emotional upbringing. Hmm. Okay. Okay. I agree. I agree. That makes sense. But emotional programming is because at some level we're all exposed to ideas and societal beliefs that program our emotions. And yeah, I guess a lot of that stems from our upbringing, but those are also mendable. I don't think they're permanently fixed. I think you can change those. And again, I know guys who are successful with code approach and they have all sorts of different upbringings. Some people were really sheltered as kids and they still find a way to get into this space. Other guys grew up being, out there in the open, socializing, etc. So it's hard to make a diagnosis, man, because I don't know people. Um, so I'm curious to know where you get your where you got that idea from, and it sounds like you transitioned from my belief to a new belief. But yeah, uh, I have friends who don't fear public speaking. Yeah, no, of course. Some people are just naturally extroverted, by the way. So some people are just somewhat born with a talent, and they're predisposed for certain activities, and more power to them, right? So yeah, it's of course everybody's different. But it's funny because some people are just born like that, but other people, like I'll speak for myself. I used to hate public speaking. I mean, even the idea of like doing a live stream here is kind of crazy that I'm doing it now. At some point in my life, I would have been terrified of doing this. So you can change, right? So you can have a certain upbringing, but you don't have to be tied to that, right? Of course, it means that some people have more work to do in terms of unwiring those that programming. But I think with enough action, you can change because I think at some level we are just a repeated set of behaviors, right? We are people, we experience certain experiences. That external stimuli shapes the way that our brain is formed in childhood and in our teenage years and as early adults. And of course, this is a sensitive time in somebody's life, so these these experiences, they hold a lot of weight, but it doesn't mean that that can't change, right? So yeah, I just think it's a case of breaking out of those beliefs. So I'm gonna leave soon. This will be the last response I give, John. But you said because as someone from Muslim background, I grew up in household where I couldn't speak loudly, talk directly, and be extra polite. So to overcome it, I had to reprogram through emotional exposure. Exactly, exactly. No, I feel you, man. I feel you. I feel you. Um, Yeah, I had to, that's the same thing I had to do, man. I had to reprogram it through emotional exposure for sure. That's why even I did a live stream with Ephraim, who runs Pool University, and I talked about how just as much as a negative experience can wire your brain in a certain way overnight, because think about it, that's kind of what trauma is, right? So if somebody has a car crash, you could have grown up 15 years not being scared of cars, and then you have a car crash, one day, one car crash, and all of a sudden you spend the next 15 years being scared of cars, right? Because of that one novel but intense experience, right? And so even in your case, you're saying that you grew up in a household where you couldn't do these things. So in your case, it's not even one instance. It's like a succession over years of being restricted and having these cultural norms being pushed down your throat. But you're right. You can overcome it through emotional exposure because the brain it's malleable, right? So just as much as a negative experience can shift your mentality in a certain way, the same can be said for a positive one. And yeah, and so you just have to go for those positive emotional exposure experiences. So in code approach, you do an approach and the girl smiles and she loves it. Do you know how powerful that can be? Like boys, if you haven't done an approach, please, like if you can this is the last thing I'll say. If you can muster up the courage to do an approach, I'm telling you, chances are eventually you'll find someone who reacts well if you just do it in a good way. Now that's easier said than done. There's plenty of guys out there. I mean, I have a few videos of me approaching. I think I have one actually. I'll be posting more infields just to give more examples of like how I go about the approach. But if you get a good reaction, that's a positive experience. And that will change the way that you view yourself, the way that you view the girls, and the way that you view your abilities to actually get something from this skill. So, yes, chase more positive emotional experiences. That's how you unwind these beliefs. It's exposure therapy, basically, right? Anyway, final thought from John Partridge. Anyway, to cut to the chase, none of these thoughts are really needed in your case, as you're not looking for any long-term deep relationships. I wouldn't say that. I mean, I'll look for them eventually. Um, yeah, I don't know about that. That's an interesting one. Maybe I'll think about that and then I'll come back to you, John Partridge. But I think that my thoughts apply to anyone looking for anything. Being direct is just as important if you're looking for a long term relationship, or whether or not you're looking for something more short term. I think it's important and it works either way. Because even if you're looking for a long term relationship, you still have to establish that romantic connection, and that's what being direct does. Anyway, that's it, boys. Thank you for tuning in. I'm gonna go eat my late lunch or late breakfast. I've not eaten anything, but that was fun. Yeah, I'll catch you boys in the next one. But yeah, John Smith. Yeah, I'm gonna head off, man. But yeah, thank you. Take care, boys. All right, peace.